Hello team. In this video, we're going to talk about potential disadvantages of microservices. So not everything is great about microservices. So one possible problem with microservices is cascading errors. So one of the advantages we discussed of microservices is that the failures are usually contained within a single microservice, and then we can quickly identify the microservice that's experiencing the failure and fix it. So this is an advantage and it's okay. But not all failures are contained within a single microservice. It may happen that a failing microservice induces failures in other microservices. Say a microservice goes crazy and then starts issuing a bazillion requests to other microservices, so it might induce very heavy load on other microservices. And this will bring your application to a halt, possibly make it inoperable. And another problem is that a microservice might be used by many other microservices. So if this critical microservice fails, all the other microservices that depend on it may also fail. So two examples come to mind. One is a failure that happened in Google's authentication system back in December 2020. So the authentication system is used by many other services like Gmail, YouTube, and Calendar. So all of these systems require authentication, and when there's a failure in the authentication system, all the other systems became unusable. So the system themselves were working, but no one could log into them, so you can't do anything. So this is an example of a cascading failure. Another example is from Google's log service. So a log service allows an application or a microservice to ask exclusive rights to a given resource. So many applications need exclusive rights to resources, so this log service is used by many applications in Google. And the log service is extremely reliable. And because applications depend on the log service, they might assume that the log service is available 100% of the time, which might not be the case. So what they did is they fail the log service on purpose so that other applications also fail, and then their developers can see what happens when the log service goes down and try to improve the behavior of that application. For example, can we make this application work without the log service? So they fail the log service on purpose to prevent cascading failures later on when the log service actually fails. So they test the other applications by failing the log service. Another potential disadvantage is management complexity. So we've discussed that one of the advantages of microservices is that they're small and have contained complexity. But if you have hundreds of microservices, with crazy interactions between them, then these interactions can get complex. And if you have a lot of microservices, then it becomes more complex to manage them and costly. So some of this management complexity is helped out by orchestration systems. But, if your deployment gets very complicated with hundreds of microservices, then even the configuration of the deployment on Kubernetes, for example, might become unwieldy. And another problem that might lead to management complexity is duplication and overlap of functionality. So microservices are usually developed by small teams. So a large company might have many small teams working on many different microservices. So some teams might be unaware of all of the microservices that exist, so they might re-implement some feature without knowing that they're doing it. So you might have duplicated functionality. And now, instead of having one microservice, you have two microservices doing more or less the same thing. And one disadvantage of microservices is reduced performance. So one of the advantages of monolithic applications is that they can have shared memory, global variables, and they can access other modules by just calling functions. So this improves performance. And in a microservice, we don't have this. So in microservices, we need to load data multiple times. We send requests and receive responses over the network. So this incurs overhead. So microservices are not as performant as monolithic applications. And another potential problem is increased attack surface. So each microservice is small and not very complex, so they're easier to secure. So you can secure one microservice more easily than a monolithic application. But because you have many microservices, there are more points in your application that can be attacked. So it's, you have to guarantee that all of the microservices are secure for the whole application to be secure. And finally, developing microservices requires complementary skills. And these are the skills that we're learning in this course. We need to understand how cloud computing works, orchestration technologies, how to put applications inside containers, and you don't need this to build a monolithic application. So the sets of skills are different, and if you're migrating from developing monolithic applications to microservices, you might need to retrain your workforce.